Oh my God, guys. Counterpoints just joined the call. This is incredible.
Did he really?
Did you just misgender Counterpoints?
Oh, did she really?
Oh my God, don't.
What's up, man? How's it going?
How are you doing, Counterpoints?
Oh, I'm doing fucking great. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Welcome.
No, I'm super happy to be here. Yeah, please, for the love of God, don't, I'm swimming in the wake of Counterpoints' popularity, but do not set false expectations. People will riot in the streets. So, but yeah, I'm doing good.
When you came up with your, well, I don't know, when did you come up with your YouTube name for Counterpoints?
Yeah, it was about 2 years ago, and I'm not gonna lie, there was the small, shark manipulative mentality of like, oh well, people like Contra. I'm literally 2 letters off, so whatever.
I don't know. I think it's biting you in the butt now. I'm not sure it's a good idea.
Nah, I'm completely fine with it because, like, basically they're gonna be like, "Oh, this isn't the leftist, bread tuber video essayist. This is a different person. What is going on?" That's right. And that question of what is going on, it gets you pretty far. So I'm good with that.
Is this part of your secret right-wing grift? You're gonna suck in all the Counterpoints viewers. They're gonna be innocent trans people are so confused trying to find Counterpoints on YouTube, and then they'll get suckered into your alt-right rabbit hole.
Oh man, yeah. Actually, that is. I'm very open about my nefarious plot. My nefarious plot is to shift the gravity like very center. That way, like basically, we have unironic trans center right people. I'm very much looking forward to my agenda coming to fruition.
We should mention that. Now I'm going to say Counterpoints. Counterpoints was not on the show last week, but kind of on the show last week. We reviewed a video that Counterpoints was in, where he completely destroyed Detective Tails. Now everybody's calling him. That seems to be what the internet has dubbed him. Detective Tails. Do you want to mention what was the aftermath of you completely annihilating Detective Tails? And really, I heard he deleted some of his internet presence, so he was completely demoralized by you just pointing out that he had nothing of value to add to the conversation.
Yeah, it's been so just to keep it simple, my name is Connor, so like CONOR, and I run a YouTube channel named Counterpoints, and then Counterpoints is just like common spelling if anybody wants to look me up in the next whatever amount of time that we're together. But basically, so what happened was we had that crazy debate. Lauren and I obviously felt like we staked out a pretty easy position, which is bad stuff happened during the late 19th, early 20th century. But that doesn't justify Molotov cocktailing churches. Like, I feel like that's a pretty defensible position.
Oh, easy. Yeah. Good job.
But then basically, obviously, of course, we got, for everybody who saw the shit show, we couldn't move past definitions. We couldn't agree on anything. It felt like they were literally talking past everything that we said. So the fallout really was that, kind of pretty unanimous across the entire internet that Lauren and I did fairly well. The other side didn't do as well. And then just to address Tail of Twin Rabbits, basically, he muted his Twitter for a while. Destiny was interested in speaking with him. It seems after he reached out, he muted his Twitter just because of the bombardment of negative attention. And then same thing with the YouTube. I think it's been privated as well. So I'm sure he'll come back eventually. But, it's kind of one of those things is like just because you can like read material and regurgitate it and be like a React Andy or something doesn't mean that you can do well in a debate. So,
yeah, great stuff. True. Do you have a take on Tim Pool or the Young Turks that you want to proffer before we get back into the video?
I mean, like I obviously, if I need to jump into YouTube so I can watch the video and tag along, that would be, I'll do that.
I still have to send you the watch together link. I'll do that. Go ahead and give us your take though.
Yeah, but I was just gonna say, for Tim, I think like the primary criticism from like I identify as like center right, but I basically debate leftists all the time, so I feel like I understand their perspectives pretty well. Their criticism of Tim is he's like, I'm a liberal. But then he, kind of is like pro MAGA, and he repeats a lot of right-wing talking points, and it seems like he has some Boogaloo sympathies. So, realistically, he's probably a libertarian, right? And then when it comes to the Young Turks, I just feel like they jumped the shark probably like 5 years ago, and they've just been kind of like lol cows ever since. So that's really my summary.
Very succinct and true.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
I agree, but yeah,
I agree.
I agree with I sent you a link to the watch together. So I'm not sure I agree with the Tim Pool, because I was fiddling around with sending you the link, so I don't remember.
Yeah, no, just the Tim Pool thing. It just seems like he's
a libertarian, I think you said, which I think there is some truth to that. I mean, I think
he definitely has sympathies that way.
The thing that I have trouble with is that they're setting up a situation where this is just a smear campaign to make their audience believe that Tim Pool is dishonest. And I don't know that I would label Tim Pool as dishonest. I don't feel like Tim Pool is being dishonest. I mean, Sitch made an argument that not covering certain stories is somewhat dishonest. And I think if you're a journalist who's got a reputation for covering everything, yeah, there's an argument to be made there. But I don't think Tim Pool is the kind of person that would do blatantly dishonest things like lie and tell people I'm a centrist when really he's like this hardcore right-winger.
Let's be specific, because they're making a very specific claim of type of dishonesty.
Right.
Because I'm saying there's a difference between people falling in the trap of cultivating specific information for their niche audience. So they're only going to report and talk about very specific things that they know their audience wants to hear. Right. That's very different than their claim, which is that Tim Pool is a secret right-winger who wants to suck people from the left and the center over into being secret right-wingers too. That's a very different claim.
Right.
Yeah, and if y'all can hear me okay, I think that basically if you watch the Destiny debates or the Vosh debates, I think that it's more the cool thing about live content is it's really hard to think on your feet and be dishonest and be optical and be rhetorically optically accurate all the time.
Totally
it's hard
agree.
to play that. Yeah, it's really hard to play that many games in your own head. So if you watch the Destiny or the Bosch live streams, Tim says all the same things that he normally says, but he does it in a live format, and he does it with pushback, and he does it with like criticism and all that kind of stuff. So I think even Vosh and Destiny both said, like, no, as frustrating as I find his perspectives, I do think that he's acting honestly, and that's kind of been I think Destiny's really good at burning bridges, but I think Vosh, the reason why he got on the show multiple times was because basically he was able to build enough of rapport because he thought there was enough good faith communication for them to continue having a relationship.
I completely disagree, but
what's your take on that?
Well, I think Vosh built a rapport just so he'd have access to his audience. I don't think Vosh actually believes it, like Tim Pool's being honest with him, or even cares if Tim Pool's being honest with him.
Well, that's at least what he's gonna. That's at least what he's portrayed to his audience, right? And then obviously this is the.
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if he went right back to his audience and was telling his audience that Tim Pool is lying through his teeth.
Grifting, lying asshole.
Tim Pool's a lying. Yeah, exactly. Tim Pool's a lying, grifting asshole, and I'm just going on his platform so that I can win over more people to socialism. I wouldn't be surprised. If a clip surfaced of Vosh saying that tomorrow? That would not surprise me at all.
Well, and isn't that frustrating when like your rhetorical and optical and political positions are kind of like set like they're built out of sand, you know, where it's like, hey, I'm not telling you the truth. I'm telling you what I think are effective arguments to get you to believe what I want you to believe. But ultimately, like, truth is, arbitrary. And at the end of the day, it's like even objectivity is the pooling of subjectivity, which I think is like there's a grain of truth to that. But then when you come out and say, I don't even believe in rooting my perspective in what I could approximate objective truth is, it really does kind of, like for me, that makes me like really hesitant to, like you said, trust what seems like a sincerely forwarded held belief, because you're like, he could change tomorrow just because it's better optically. And that's frustrating. That's really frustrating.
This is one of our criticisms of your debate, because you are definitely a truth seeker. Like, you kept extending the olive branch, like way beyond the point of any need to do that. So, but I mean, I admire that in that you are a truth seeker, but there's a time to cut your losses. And some of these, I mean, it's hard for me to think that Detective Tails or Lance is operating in good faith at this point in the game. It's hard for me to think that Vosh is operating in good faith or Hassan is operating in good faith. I just, they're not really interested in seeking truth. And it's even worse than that because, you know, I think this is the thing, because the real tragedy of life is that it's really, it's not good against evil, but it's good against good. Like, people on both sides want to build the good society, but they just have different ideas how to go about it. But the characterization that a lot of people have of conservatives is, no, they want to destroy society. What are you talking about? I mean, that's what's so interesting about this video, because they're basically making an argument that these people are just, you know, like, racism is an intricate part of their lives that they enjoy. It's like, what the fuck world are you living in?
Well, yeah, and there's that's why I think it's important to parse it out. And like, even like you kind of said, you know, there's a time and place for being good faith, and there's a time to be charitable. But kind of what I find is that charitability and good faith and all that kind of stuff, it's not just representations to the other person so you can hopefully have like a more productive conversation. It's also in olive branch to the audience, right? Because we're not just there for each other, we're there for the audience. So what I'm really trying to do when, you know, Tail is being obnoxious or Surfs is being obnoxious, and it seems like I'm ignoring any barbs that they're throwing my way, and I'm just continuing to try to get back to like descriptive reality or prescriptive consensus, it is basically that, like, oh, turns out not every single person who identifies as right wing or centrist is a lunatic. Turns out that, like, this isn't just blood sports. There is something like real about what we're talking about. And then also on top of that, the people that I'm following, the people that I've fallen into a cult of personality of, maybe they're not telling me the full truth. And I think that can be demonstrated through, you know, charitable discourse and all that kind of stuff. Is basically like, oh shit, like, this guy is being completely sensible. My guy is being a fucking lunatic in this conversation. What have I missed about my own guy? And that kind of cognitive dissonance can really mindfuck people.
Oh,
so
hell yeah.
That's part of what I'm trying to do anyways.
Yeah. You're definitely searching for truth. We're searching for truth in the same way. One of the reasons why I think our show is popular is because Sitch and I do challenge each other, but we challenge each other in a good faith way. Like, we definitely are trying to find, you know, what is the best path forward. And I feel like a lot of people in the commentary space, specifically the political commentary space, they're just out to destroy the other side. They don't want to understand the other side. They don't want to empathize with the other side. It's a tangible loss for them to actually identify the real arguments that the other side is making, which is just, it's a terrible situation to be in.
Yeah, and I don't want to bore the audience to death, because I could literally talk about this stuff all day. I know they probably want us to react to the video, but at the same time, like, the reason why this is so important is I would invite anybody who's you know, watching this content in like the alternative media political sphere, is don't just look at like people who are able to take the arguments of other people apart. Also look at basically what are the prescriptive arguments being offered by your side and whether or not you agree with them, because it's actually really easy to take like a complex argument with a whole bunch of supporting positions and then either rip the argument apart or rip the supporting positions apart. It's a lot harder to forward your own prescriptive reality and then defend it against criticism. And so that's kind of where I think it's like one of my frustrations in political discourse and Twitch and Twitter is it's like people bring up criticisms of your side and you're like, oh yeah, but did you know that your side is also bad? And that's literally like 50% of political discourse on Twitter and Twitch, and it drives me up the wall.
Right. Well, going back to the last thing about the Vosh thing, it's funny that you were talking about, Adam, is that, I mean, if you remember, we covered the Count Dankula debate.
We did.
And like Vosh, like towards the end of it, is trying to be very nice and cordial to Dank and all this stuff. And then it's like the second Dank leaves, he's like, oh, that was the hardest, debate I ever done optically. Dank's a terrible racist, and yet I couldn't pin him down. So I completely agree that he's probably thinking, or at least doing the same thing with Tim Pool to his own audience.
Isn't that just oh my God, to live in that headspace, to go into Tim Pool's studio and think the whole time, okay, well, I have to put up with this miserable, sexist, racist, just so I can forward my political views. Oh God, what the?
Well, but this is this is where I think it's a little bit bigger than that, though. So for instance, like I would say leftists have done a really good job of, unfortunately, rehabilitating the word socialism and communism within the past 20 years. Like this would not have been even possible 30 years ago. In 1990, if you were trying to rehabilitate socialism or communism, people would have been like, oh, you're a Soviet apologist piece of shit. We're gonna, metaphorically burn you at the stake.
Can I ask you a quick question before you move on? So I'm always curious about that, because I do agree with you, but I wonder if it's a product of social media because it's like a fad, or if it's really material conditions have dwindled to the point where people really are suffering and looking for an alternative economic system.
I think it's both, actually. So if you look at social media, basically what I would say is that we're in probably the most democratic time ever when it comes to social media.
Sure.
More people have more voices, access to technology, all that kind of stuff. All you need is an opinion and a webcam, and you can become an alternative media pundit within a few years if you're good, right? But when it comes to the material conditions, if you look at the wealth held by the baby boomers or Gen X or the millennials, by a certain age group, then it's pretty clear that intergenerational wealth is not being passed down in the way that it was to the baby boomers. So I do think there is a desperation for millennials in particular. I've been able to get past this through bootstrapping. But I think there is a desperation amongst millennials where they're like, hey, I was told that I go to a 4-year school, I get a good job out of my 4-year school, and then I can afford a wife and kids and a stable living. And for a lot of people, this just isn't happening. They're just not able to find the 3-2 white picket fence 2-car lifestyle. And I think it makes them desperate. And this is also something that was happening during the 1920s. Where we were in the Gilded Age. It was one of the most powerful economic times in the world, but the wealth was not distributed, and the middle class wasn't doing very well. So that's kind of where during that time frame, two ideologies were becoming very popular: communism and fascism. And I think we find ourselves in a similar position where fascism and communism are popular alternatives for desperate people. So I am worried about that.
Yeah, me too. I agree. If we were advocating for sensible policy, that's the thing that's so frustrating for me. When I see these people with huge platforms and huge influence, and they're not advocating for anything that's going to help anyone, because I just don't see how socialism is going to solve
it's supererogatory.
Yeah,
buying a $3 million mansion helps everyone. Adam, I don't know what you're talking about.
It's super.
Listen,
it's supererogatory. Okay, it's a term that Vosh googled for the philosophy tube debate, which is it would be a moral good if you did so, but it's not a moral duty. And I was like, holy shit! I was like, you Googled that term just for this debate. That's what happened. You were like, what word can I use to sound smart while defending not doing anything with your wealth or influence?
That's totally, living your principles is a moral duty. That's insane. Anyone says otherwise, I would be very skeptical of ever interacting with that person ever.
Can I tell you what's even crazier is I've been on a couple of panel shows over the past couple of weeks, literally talking about the Hassan drama, and they'll talk right past me and they'll say, you're just mad that he has a nice house. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck about the house. Okay.
You're saying socialists have to be homeless and can't eat food and can't be wealthy.
Okay.
Blah, blah, blah.
So for anybody who's going to listen to this clip, okay, what I'm saying is that religious people espouse a certain set of values. They say that I have a moral code that I follow. I don't follow it perfectly, but I try my best. And if you're Muslim, then there's something called the zakat. It's 2.5% of your income. And then with Christians, there's something called the tithe, which is like 10% of your income. And it's not everybody does this, but it's like a religious duty to give away a certain percentage of your income towards like communitarian good. And basically what I was saying was like, if Hassan is popularizing socialism and basically taking like teenagers' lunch money in order to do so, the least he could do is take 2.5% to 10% of his income and give it towards the causes that he thinks. Like, he doesn't even have to do anything himself. He can literally just give the money to the Democratic Socialists of America, and they can do something with the money.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And like the amount of pushback that I got from that was insane. They were like, again, they were just like, you're just mad that he has a nice house. You're just mad that he's successful. You're just mad that he's doing better than you. You know, nobody used the term supererogatory, but they might as well have. Like, it just drove me up the wall.
I mean, it's difficult because I don't think these people actually believe this. It's all just, it's all this tribal. Well, it's all this tribal politics. It's like, oh, well, if you're attacking someone on our side, you're just helping the other side. So we have to defend our team. That's the base emotion that these people are just reacting to.
Well, humans are inherently tribal.
Sure.
And what I would say too, so because I've been like gray pilled on the entire situation. Because
on humanity, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
What does gray pilled mean? I'm not up to speed on my pills. Well, I am up to speed on my pills, but not my gray pills.
Well, so I think black pilled would obviously be negative, and then white pilled would be like optimistic, and then gray pilled. I don't think I've heard anybody else use it, but I'm just saying, like,
fence-sitter, yes.
I feel, yeah, being the ultimate centrist, right? So I'm simultaneously pessimistic about the nature of humanity, but optimistic about how it can be used.
Yeah.
So I think like somebody was being really pessimistic, and they're like, oh, nobody cares about the ideas, and nobody really cares about coherent philosophy. It's all tribalistic bullshit. It's all cults of personality. And I would say that like it's probably 80-20, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like 80% of it is probably cults of personality, where you're literally like, I like my guy, and my guy is cool, so I'm going to post hoc justify everything my guy does in order to continue my tribalism.
Correct.
20% of it is probably like philosophical rigor, where you're like, I'm actually analyzing ideas. I'm trying to forward a vision in the world that I think is positive. I'm trying to be consistent with my logic and my principles and all that kind of stuff.
20% is really generous.
Sitch, I was thinking like
that 5% maybe.
All right.
Come on.
Well, we can argue about percent.
Let's go 25. What's the matter of being optimistic here? It's better to be optimistic and wrong than pessimistic and right, Sitch. Let's go 30.
There you go. There you go.
I think 20 is optimistic.
That's incredibly optimistic.
But at the same time, that's a place that you can operate, right? You can try to be charismatic. You can try to be funny. You can try to be interesting. You can try to be weird. And you can try to have that cult of personality thing. But then if you maintain intellectual rigor and consistency, then you can also go after the 20% of people who are looking to ground their lives in something a little bit more firm.
Right.
And that's where somebody was kind of presenting it as like a false choice or a false binary between the cult of personality and like philosophical rigor. And I think that like any great leader throughout history. So if you look at like Julius Caesar or whatever, like Julius Caesar was all cult of personality, no consistent principles. Mm-hmm. If you look at Marcus Aurelius, he was a cult of personality and he had consistent principles. So if you look at like the greatest leaders that have ever walked the planet, they weren't just a cult of personality. They also had something of value to say.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I agree. Let's get back to the video. Before we watch the video, I just want to say two things very quickly. First of all, I want to thank Actual Justice Warrior, who is our unofficial marketing manager in the chat, who is promoting everyone to like the video and did so last week. Thanks so much, Sean. Really appreciate it.
I know we hit a record, I think, with likes.
We did. Thanks to Sean's diligent work, we did hit a record for likes last week's video. And I'll credit Sean for that entirely, not Maul and Rag showing up either. But the second thing I want to say, because it's being spammed by a couple people in the chat, is Jay for $20 says Sitch, and he linked the video where Tim Pool talked about the Carolina case.
Oh my
about. And it's called
Sitch.
Well, wait, hold before you get crazy. Okay. The title of the video is more voter fraud exposed, a mailman pleads guilty, and there's a time code 1735. Someone get this guy some free will. on me, Sitch, Tim Pool derangement syndrome. So while you and Connor were gabbing for like 20 minutes, I listened to this section of the video.
I thought you were sneaking. I thought you were
Yes.
doing something over there.
And so here's the thing.
Did you get caught with your pants down, Sitch?
No. Actually, this almost further validates.
Oh no, no.
So this is a video. So the majority, like 99% of the video, is about the Democrats trying to steal votes or how voting fraud is being made easy. Blah 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 blah. And then for like I want to say almost literally 10 seconds, Tim Pool mentions that one story before going back to Democrat mail voting fraud.
No.
So using this as an example of me being wrong is very strange. So yes, he technically does mention it for 10 seconds, but okay, that's fine. He mentioned it. He didn't do a full video on it like he did on all the other topics, and he hid it in a video that's all about left-wing voter fraud. So there you go.
Better sources of information that might help explain some of the.
I don't think Connor realizes that he's changing the video. Connor, I muted you for a second because it sounded like you had people yelling in the background. You can unmute yourself. I believe. I'm not sure if I can unmute you.
Oh, yeah. I'm so sorry. I thought I was catching up to y'all. So
I don't know where we were though.
You literally got to rewind it like 80%.
Yeah, exactly.
We were at 4 minutes and 20 seconds.
Look at you. You're on it. So
I just opened up YouTube and I went back on our video.
Okay. The Sitch, the thing is, Tim Pool looks kind of like my dad, and I want to like him. So
I know you.
It's
I know
why you got to be such a ball buster about.
Why do I gotta have these principles?
Why
I care about? I know.
why.
So awful.
Cult of personality. Remember what Connor was saying? Come on, Tim is our guy.
I know. I'm so sorry. I forgot.
But fame and popularity and money and all of these things necessarily.
Oh, Lordy.
What's wrong with fame and popularity and money?
Everything. What are you talking about?
What's going on? What's wrong with that
You
stuff?
can only find the truth if you're poor and not listened to in like a cupboard somewhere. All right.
I hate that argument.
Well, no, but it's funny because again, everything he's saying applies to his own existence and career as a journalist and TOT, obviously. But
radicalize their creators. And when I say radicalize, I want to be clear about one thing. I personally have no idea if Tim Pool believes the things that he says on YouTube. And I honestly think it doesn't really matter that much because the actual impact of the things he says is far more important. And the actual, the degree to which those ideas are spread to, again, an audience that reaches, at his peak, was over 100 million views a month. And so the question of like whether Tim has been radicalized it's not really has this one person gone further to the right, but the content that they produce, that you can track and that you can watch change over time. So this question of whether he likes to call himself a centrist or a disaffected liberal or any of those terms that he likes to use, to me, isn't really interesting or one that could be answered, whether it's by reporters or even, a very well-trained psychiatrist who sat down with Tim Pool for many hours. That's not the point.
So they spent the first 5 minutes just character assassinating and attacking Tim, but has he brought any examples of something that he thinks Tim has done or reported incorrectly?
No, it's
MAGA
old stuff.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah,
oh no, you're right.
Literally...
He did say Tim supported Trump. You're right. That was the example. I forgot.
This is 100%. No, this is 100% it. It's basically they view support for MAGA as crypto fascism.
Right.
So if you support Trump, if you support the right wing in that kind of way, then they just view that as like 2 steps away from fascism and neo-monarchy.
It's impossible to support Trump and be a good journalist. We all know that's the facts. That's the facts as we know them.
Mr. Dolphin for $20 says, I'm 2 weeks late, but Adam is right, Sitch. Adam is never right.
What? I'm right all the time.
Adam is right, Sitch. Maybe not the immune system, but artists are a great indicator for the health of a culture. My elephant goes crazy with that kind of stuff. A-Team is the dream team.
Listen to this. Adam. Connor, you don't know this, but I was on I was having myself a good little rant about how artists are the immune system for society. How we're basically
artists
like
are the most important people in society. They protect society.
And then Sitch took a giant dump on it.
And then
Sitch
Sitch got so seethingly jealous. The jealousy was just
no, my eyes were rolling out of my skull at that point. I was like, oh geez.
Okay,
I read philosophy.
What about Dave Chappelle?
Okay. Yeah, exactly. What about Dave Chappelle? Excellent
He's
point,
not an artist.
Thank you.
He's a comedian. Okay.
Is comedy not art?
No, it's different. That's not the type of art Adam was talking about.
Bullshit.
He was like, us hoity-toity painters and artists drawing our little pictures.
You can't listen. Dave Chappelle had the most popular show on Comedy Central, and he got on a plane and went to India to meditate. You're telling me that's not an artist? Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here.
True, that's right. True artists go to India to meditate. Yes, that's
no,
exactly
but if you look at Bill Burr, so I mean maybe comedy is the thing that I'm talking about most.
All artists.
But Bill Burr, Chris Rock, Dan Carlin,
artists.
Yeah, all of these people. Come on, what's his name? Bo Burnham.
Yeah.
So all of these people are able to tap into unsaid things in society. Yeah, they're able to tap into like the cognitive dissonance within the zeitgeist and then expose it for everybody to contemplate.
Totally.
And they do that in funny ways.
Yeah.
And so while I'm more of like I'm more with Sitch reflexively, where artists are a bunch of degenerates that like suck off the teat of society.
Well, I didn't.
Oh my God, Connor, kick this man! What is happening here? Major animated betrayal here.
While that may be true, they also serve an important social function, which is holding the zeitgeist of society accountable to itself. And so that's actually like so for instance like I view something that Dave Chappelle got in trouble for as like a really interesting point about like transgenderism, for instance. He said that like, you know how I know like transgender people are real is because nobody would go like he said it way more brutally than this. But he basically said like nobody would go through bottom surgery unless there was something real underlying it. And he said that in like the least tactful way possible.
Yeah.
And while like a whole bunch of like transgender advocates got really upset, I think that could give the audience pause. Like, wait, hold up. Like that is serious. Cause like, I mean, just think about dudes, like one of the most important parts of your body that you kind of like joke about.
One of the most.
I'm being charitable. Okay. It's the most important part of your body. You joke about it. You joke about it all the time. You use it every single day. So to be willing to forego that because of a psychological issue or because of a physical issue, that's like obviously a serious thing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where he's saying it in the most abrasive way possible, but he's still forwarding a level of cognitive dissonance within the zeitgeist, and I think that's important.
Forwarding a level of, or you mean destroying a level of cognitive dissonance?
Nah, because I think he's just bringing it to the level because I don't think people are able to reconcile one way or the other. If you don't think trans people are real, then him bringing that to the fore is going to mess with your head, but that doesn't mean that you're going to change your opinion. And then if you're pro-trans people, then obviously a lot of pro-trans people got really upset by what he said.
So you're saying the comedy bit solidifies the cognitive dissonance? I'm just a little...
I wouldn't say that like artists are ultimately responsible for coming up.
Cognitive dissonance, I understand as when you encounter new information that doesn't fit your worldview. The perfect example would be something like the Young Turks encounter a conservative MAGA hat wearing person that is black. And they are like, what? I don't understand. All MAGA people are racist. How can you be black and a MAGA person? It doesn't make sense. It's cognitive dissonance. Racism. Yeah. And they have to, so there you go. They come up with this new narrative. Oh, let me explain it this way. It's internalized racism. They're literally racist against themselves. That's my understanding of cognitive dissonance. Am I right Sitch? I feel like.
Yeah. Well, cognitive dissonance is just when you can't accept something.
Yeah,
so you
exactly.
create some kind of bull BS in your mind.
They can't accept. This guy can't accept the fact that Tim Pool is like a millionaire now.
Well, no, he can accept that. He can't accept the idea that Tim either natural. Well, actually, I don't. He's kind of saying Tim naturally got suckered into his audience, but at the same time, he just wants to kind of denigrate him. I guess Chank's the one who's acting like Tim was never on the left ever from the beginning. So
Yeah.
Yeah, well, in what I wanted to point out, because I want to dig on artists a little bit. We don't resent artists for bringing up problems within the zeitgeist for review or contemplation. Where we do get resentful is when they start telling us their prescriptions and thinking that their prescriptions are like 10 head prescriptions that nobody's ever thought of before, and they need to be applied universally.
Yeah, no,
so
that's definitely wrong.
Yeah, so that's where I think like not trying to tell artists how to do their job, but I think the really good ones basically bring up problems in cognitive dissonance within the zeitgeist, and then they kind of leave it up to, they either imply their prescription or they leave it up to society to figure out how to solve the problem. But they still bring up the problem and poke fun at it and make you think about it. Okay. I think that's powerful.
That's exactly what I was talking about. And in the context of the conversation that we were having, we were talking about the difference between art and propaganda, because art is meant to bring up these things and speak truth to power, to basically push against the powers that be in the status quo, looking for a new path for success. The propaganda, though, all it does is enforce the status quo. That was my differentiation there. So I was saying, it's really sad that a lot of art, art in finger quotes, because I don't know that you could call these woke movies like the woke Star Wars, that's basically propaganda. They're enforcing a point of view. When they talk about, I wanted to subvert expectations, you're not subverting any expectations, dude. Like the expectation is you're going to shit all over male characters because that's the new status quo.
Listen, he subverted the shit out of my expectations, all right? I was expecting a good movie, okay?
All right. Comedy show. Woo!
Here's going back to the original debate. I still don't think I would say artists are the immune system of society.
Oh my goodness.
But I think you could say that artists, especially comedians, are the canary in the coal mine for society. And when they start getting attacked for making art or telling jokes, that's a big red flag for the direction of, or whoever's attacking them. That's a big red flag that those people are dangerous.
Right. You're saying that when the canary dies, that's when you say, but what would the immune system be?
There's a gas leak here. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Right.
What is the immune system then?
I would say that's like law enforcement.
Enlightened centrist, obviously.
Well, I am an artist, so we're 50% there.
There you go.
Man, no, I was gonna say that it's law enforcement, like military and medical personnel. That's what I was gonna say.
What?
Well, but you're referring to something. You're referring to something completely different. Because Adam was referring to kind of like the cultural immune system. You're referring to like the physical, actual protection of society.
And also those can be. Those can be used to enforce the status quo in a way that's not always pretty. So.
Right.
Well, yeah, but then that's actually continuing with that analogy. So I think Sitch is right that there's like a differentiation here between culture and like physical analogies. But for the physical analogy, my argument would be that would be similar to like an autoimmune disorder.
Sure.
So like when you have the white blood cells that like attack healthy cells, then that would kind of be symbolic of like an authoritarian regime attacking its own citizens. Right. So that's where I think the analogy still stands, because it would be a dysfunction of an autoimmune.
Your audio.
Are you catching the roboting too?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry guys.
That's okay. You're back.
You're back. Finish it up.
Actual Justice Warrior gave us $5. Thank you so much, Sean. Sean says, Connor, income rose the fastest during the Gilded Age, and that's when the middle class was created. Stop repeating propaganda about, quote, dying middle class. Well,
we'll fight about this later, buddy.
Yeah, we can fight about that later, but I don't know what you're referring to, Sean, because every single graph or chart I've seen that shows income distribution or middle class growth all shows that like from the 20s to the 30s, it was at an all-time low, and then you start to see from the 40s to the 70s a huge explosion of the middle class and of wealth not being all at the top. So I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to when you say the Gilded Age. is what created the middle class. So I disagree.
Yeah, I don't even know what the Gilded Age is, but I'm just the autoimmune system of all of society. So who cares what I think?
That's true.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, go right ahead.
No, this is such a fascinating component of your reporting, and it's something that
I feel like we're further than we were, but maybe not.
No, we're not. We're fine.
Kind of see play out in real time. And what I find fascinating, look, you write, here's an excerpt from your piece. A former digital media journalist who originally built up his name with on-the-ground reporting and live streaming, including stints at Vice and Fusion, Poole now postures as a rational centrist, you write, or disaffected liberal who grew to loathe the excesses of the left. And so would we talk about...
I mean, you can criticize him you want, but that's a pretty fair description.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's spot on. What's the matter here?
Yeah,
What's wrong with that?
Sure.
It's again, it's support for MAGA. Like I'll be a broken record on this because I think MAGA people see Donald Trump as like the avatar through which to preserve the republic, whereas leftists and progressives view MAGA as like an attempt at like a neo-monarchy.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's literally, and like for me, because I have liberal and libertarian sympathies, I'm not a fan of the cult of personality around Trump. So
yeah.
Just
right.
Hey, we're getting a lot of background noise from you, Connor.
Yeah, let me mute myself. Yeah,
maybe just kill those kids. I'm not. that was a joke, guys. Come on.
Don't actually do it. Lucifer the Doorman for 20 Canadian. Thank you so much, Lucifer. Says this TYT video is pure projection. You will hear Anna claim that Tim does all the quote evil things that TYT does on a daily basis. I got a huge laugh at this video.
Yeah.
Yes. Very true. Very true.
The grift, right? I mean, it's really repurposing a strategy that we've seen on Fox News, where they'll seek out a black person who'll come on the show and say awful things about the black community. And in order for this,
do they do that?
I don't know. I don't watch Fox News enough. I'm assuming they're not roaming the streets like, excuse me, fellow black person, do you hate other black people? Would you like to be on Fox News?
I could see there being some segment where the person wants to blame certain things on the black community, but you would have to get a black person to call out their own community. Obviously,
I think what's actually happening, she's describing this in the most negatively hyperbolic way she possibly can. Yeah, uncharitable way, is that you can't criticize. You can't talk about like race issues as a white person unless you say, well, it's obviously racism against black people. And so what they'll do is they'll get a black person to say, oh, well, maybe the black community or lower income black community, really, which is what everyone's talking about, has problems that are not because of, racism, not because of the evil white man doing et cetera, et cetera. And so she's characterizing that as, oh, well, they're just black people hating black people.
Right. Yes. That's what I would think. But
right.
I mean, there has to be people that have that opinion. The thing that I really hate about this argument that she's making is that you're basically saying that black people shouldn't go on Fox News, which,
yes.
Why would you? That seems a little, I mean, isn't it better for black people to be involved in all aspects of life? I mean, you're kind of segregating people by race.
Well, no, I mean, this is kind of what you're talking about with Larry Elder thing. Like people don't care that much about race anymore. They care more about, or maybe they still do, but they care more about your political affiliation than race.
Yes.
So it's like, oh, you can, they only want the black person who's going to be the shield, who's going to be promoting, whatever the leftist cause is that they're advocating for.
But I see a lot of black people on Fox News that are not even really talking about race issues. I mean, they have like one of the left guys who's a black person. And I mean, they don't, the
Five. Yeah.
Yeah. They do tons of segments that have nothing to do with race, and he's on there.
Right.
Well, so sorry, I swim in these circles, so I feel like I have to be like the progressive translator. The problem is that any black representation that's not explicitly like a representative of progressive ideals on these platforms, they're going to be advocating for bootstrapping. They're going to say, I did well. Look at Ben Carson, look at Larry Elder.
Right.
They're going to say like, hey, you got to, I'm getting yelled at by a 3-year-old. So, all right, hold on. I'll finish this thought after I'm done being yelled at. I'm going to mute myself.
All right.
Okay.
Strategy to work, you would need someone like Tim Pool, someone like Jimmy Dore, someone who pretends to be on the.
Oh, look at that! I didn't notice that the first time through. Throwing Jimmy Dore under the bus now too.
Yeah, that was so weird. I did notice that because, I do think Jimmy Dore is crazy, and we found a Jimmy Dore video that we have to watch.
He goes full commie. Oh my God,
it's insane. And it's funny because some people are always like, Jimmy Dore is one of the good people on the left. I'm like, oh, you say that. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah.
But it's funny because she's like, they only have one way of looking at the world. And I guess this all comes back to, you see this from Kyle Klinsky, who was a TYT guy too, where they always say, oh, everyone knows what the right way to run society is. Everyone knows what the best moral thing to do is. And thus people who disagree with me are inherently dishonest and evil and lying. Yeah. And I guess that plays into this too, because she's saying she thinks Jimmy Dore is actually pretending to be on the left or something, which he's further left than they are.
That is a great way to characterize it, Sitch, because I'm just under the impression that people are different and have different ideas about different things. Right. And every single thing I've ever encountered in my life kind of is evidence of this. How can you live in this world where you think everybody thinks the same but are hiding their true feelings? What kind of world is that?
It's so weird because it's like people think that when they're a child.
I know.
and people, like, to me, when that really hits home to you, like the difference is like the first time you're in a serious relationship with like a girlfriend or boyfriend or something, and you realize like this person has an entirely different way of looking at the world, and their family has an entirely different way of looking at the world. And a lot of your conversations and interactions with that person is kind of the meshing of your two completely different worldviews.
Exactly.
That you don't really experience maybe if you're just friends with people. You only experience if you're like living with someone or really close to someone. And I don't understand how people have made it to adulthood and are married and have children and have been in relationships that just don't realize this.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
I can explain this.
Explain it. Oh, progressive soothsayer. Oh, progressive.
Yeah. It's because they live in California. So even the Republicans.
You're right.
So even the Republicans out there are going to be like social progressives, right?
Right.
So and that's the thing is like, so looking at Larry Elder, Ben Carson, or whatever, all these self-made men who kind of are, they're capitalists and they advocate for kind of like bootstrapping and all that kind of stuff. The reason why this is viewed as like being a sellout is because not everybody can bootstrap. So, and obviously these people are successful. So they do well in the capitalist system. So it's kind of like viewed as like, oh, well, you were able to like climb the ladder, but that's because of like unique family circumstance, or maybe you were born intelligent, or maybe you had people who were looking out for you. And then you're kind of kicking the ladder out behind you. So that's kind of like the progressive criticism of bootstrappers.
Do you think Larry Elder is like kicking the ladder out from under him though? I don't really think that applies.
Well, you're saying that's how they perceive it.
Oh, okay.
So that's what he's doing.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know enough about Larry Elder to comment on his positions.
Yeah.
Sean, again for $5, says Sitch, the Gilded Age was in the late 1800s, not the 1920s. Oh, okay, my mistake. The median wage for the industry worker rose from $380 to $564, and from 1880 to 1890, a 48% increase. Oh, well, there you go. You're right. I was thinking from 1900s, 1920s. You're talking about, Gilded Age this says 1870s to 1900s. So there you go.
Well, I do agree that the conservatives are generally adhere to the bootstraps argument. I don't think that it's to the point where they think there aren't challenges for people, and there aren't even challenges that are, virtually impossible for people to overcome, which I think the progressives would mischaracterize their position as being that conservatives don't think that there's any challenges to overcome. They think anybody can bootstrap it when
Sure,
some
right.
society has drifted to the point where I do think there are significant challenges that face the younger generation today than faced my generation.
Well,
yeah.
No, and that's a good point. And you were just talking about earlier about, some people on the left who can't understand that other people see the world or perceive the world very differently. And I've noticed this from a lot of people on the right too, who are the ultra motivated, pull yourself up by the bootstrappers.
Right.
And they don't understand, when I talk to them, they don't understand how lucky they are that they were basically born as like a highly motivated individual, the type A kind of person. And like and this has been true for myself, it's been true for many people I know. If you're not born like that, to become like that is an incredibly difficult, it's possible, but it's an incredibly difficult process and journey to go through.
I call myself lazy a lot. And it really is a perception thing, because I am very motivated, and I've always had a lot of motivation to do things. And I perceive myself as being lazy because I always feel like I could do more. But a lot of people look at me and say, "Oh my God, like I could never do the kinds of things that you're doing." So perception is a lot of it. I just having goals and wanting to accomplish those goals, I guess that's not a thing a lot of people have. So, or there are a certain number of people who just don't dip their toe in those waters. But it's so fulfilling. I mean, if you can muster it, do it.
Sure. Oh, and just with the one last thing about the Gilded Age, how much of that growth wasn't the Gilded Age when like there was massive industrialization boom? So I'm not sure like how much of the economic growth is from that versus whatever specific economic policies were, being implemented.
The New Deal built the middle class. What are you talking about? It was all 100% Franklin Delano Roosevelt. We all know that. Social Security.
There you go.
I only said that
I agree.
to trigger the shit.
I know. He said, I know. The trigger Sean specifically.
But. Is it Sean? Sean doesn't like FDR? What's going on?
Sean, how do you not like FDR?
Wasn't FDR president 3 terms? I mean, that
4
says it all.
terms.
4
terms.
Really?
Okay.
4-term president.
That's right.
I mean, how can you that's
the ultimate populist. Public has spoken.
The only thing closer to the only thing higher than a 4-term president is like God. Right? I mean, we're all on the same page here, right?
Right. It was the second industrial revolution. There you go.
Yeah, so I just wanted to interject real quick. I guess I was thinking of the Roaring 20s instead of the Gilded Age.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Sure.
All you guys in your history. Who cares?
I know.
No one cares. We got a society to save here.
Toxic Monger of the Hateful Brood for $20. Thank you so much, Toxic Monger. It's one of Mahler's mongers. It says, anonymous sources say that A-Team reigns supreme and S-Class supports sacrificing cute and cuddly things over an altar to evil. I mean, that is true. Anonymous sources also state that A-Team did not fund this super chat. Hi, guys. Thank you.
We forgot to tease the plushies. We sold some plushies last week with Mahler and Rags, and we have some plushies that Sammy G has put together, and I think she's putting together an Indiegogo campaign that we may even launch like later in the stream. So
yes,
if you guys want a full set of Mahler, Rags, Adam, and Sitch plushies, you're good to go. You got a full panel show. Someone pointed out that when Mahler and Rags are on, that it's the ASMR show, the Adam, Sitch, Mahler and Rags show. Which somehow I came in top. I don't know. It's better to be lucky, guys, than anything else.
Yeah, sexy centrist in your area looking to super chat, which is a fantastic name. Sexy centrist in your area looking to super chat for $2 Canadian says Adam plus Sitch plus Mahler plus Rags equals ASMR. Coincidence? I think not. That's right, Adam. That's right. Now you know ASMR is the true way, Adam.
No, I hate ASMR, but I gotta shout out to some of these people in the chat, because we got FDR was garbage. FDR was the worst. FDR sucked Stalin's wiener. I'm sure of it. What?
It's so funny because like a lot of like the right wingers are like FDR was so evil, blah blah blah. Even though he basically created the economic system that created you know, that idyllic time period that we all think of like the 50s, the 60s.
Don't trigger
you know,
everyone. Sitch.
The white picket fences. But then at the same time,
man. I'm a backup Sitch on this shit in a second.
Thank you. And at the same time, all the communists
right-leaning Connor. Sure.
Well, but it's funny because if you listen,
look at this.
If you listen to the breadtubers, they all hate FDR because because
he didn't go far enough.
Basically they view him as like the vanguard protecting capitalism. They're like, oh, the socialist revolution was about to occur, you know, after the Great Depression, and then FDR came and he beat back the tides of socialism.
Oh, what a twist.
So yeah, they don't like him either.
The most socialist president of all time, and the socialists hate his guts.
They hate his guts. Well, because he protected capitalism.
Well, yeah. Can I? Oh my God. So
go ahead. Yeah,
I know
jump in.
This would absolutely trigger the fuck out of lefties. So basically, I've swum in these circles long enough. Yeah, FDR is viewed as the person who saved capitalism because he put in redistributive economic policies, and like these redistributive economic policies were viewed as like what was able to tempt the proletariat away from socialist revolution.
Right.
And then it was the same thing with like fascism, where it was able to basically create better material conditions, so nobody was interested in a fascist revolution either. So that's kind of where like FDR from a leftist perspective is the person who didn't go far enough and ultimately saved the capitalist class from either becoming fascist or becoming communist or like a communist or socialist revolution. And then also like I kind of want to point out, because like the meme in left-wing spheres is Dr. Richard Wolff. There was that debate between Destiny and him.
We covered that.
Dr. Richard Wolff is really famous for saying like as a joke, socialism is when the government does stuff, and when it does a whole bunch of stuff, that's communism. Well, that's actually the genuine perception of what socialism is in a lot of right-wing circles, but that's not what it is. It's actually two like very specific things. It's the decommodification of basic human needs, basically meaning that like food, shelter, like those are free, to basic people. They don't have to work in order to survive. Mm-hmm. And then it's also the workers owning the means of production, meaning that like there isn't an ownership class. There aren't people who own businesses. The businesses are owned by the collective worker body. So the reason why that like triggers the fuck out of people is because FDR did do redistributive economics, and I think it's to the detriment of the right that they associate any kind of redistributive economics with socialism. Because basically what we're doing is we are slashing our way back towards a more libertarian. So if you're a libertarian, you should be happy, but a more libertarian society like the 19th century. The fear for me, though, is that like the same kind of like wealth inequality and social instability that we saw in the early 20th century, I feel like we're on the verge of repeating it. So I want to, distract the proletariat with bread and circus and redistributive economics, so we don't either become like a fascist super state or have a socialist revolution. So I actually do think mixed economy capitalism with some redistributivism is incredibly positive, and I think the right needs to change their tune on this subject.
But you're not for the abolition of property rights. I feel like that's the biggest distinction in communism. Communism is for the abolition of property rights.
Well, right. And like communism is defined, like when people say like, oh, there's no such thing as communism or whatever, they're right, because like communism is a moneyless, classless, stateless society.
Well, yeah. Sometimes people use communism and socialism interchangeably. Obviously, it seems like you're making a distinction between socialism and communism, but socialism is the abolition of property rights. When you say that businesses are collectively owned, they're collectively owned because no single person can own a business because those property rights have been made illegal. Like they want to dissolve the worker-employee relationship.
Yeah, and then also they make a distinction between like personal property and private property, where like personal property is like your toothbrush. Like,
yeah, you can have to trigger the shit out of me. They do it over and over again. Yeah, I know. Because it's like the stupidest thing in the world. But they're like, obviously you don't understand the difference between personal property and private. It's like, no, bitch, I do. Okay. Private property is when you can't own a fucking business or make money off a piece of land. I know what the fuck. Listen, I know what the fuck. Yeah,
Listen,
I know.
but
I know.
Listen,
But this
listen,
is
listen.
I'm
Listen.
Let's talk about prostitution and personal and private property, okay? If you're using a piece of property to earn income off of, is it personal property or is it private property?
Hey, that's a great
And
question.
where does prostitution end up in this situation?
There
Where's
you
the
go.
where's the private where's the private
Well,
property in prostitution?
listen,
Just asking for reference.
Okay, I can answer this because there's a lot of like pro-sex work communists, right? So if we're viewing the vagina as the means of production, right, and the prostitute, if the
comedy show.
So if
The means
the
of
pimp,
reproduction, yes.
yeah, if the pimp owns the means of reproduction, then that's capitalism, right?
Oh,
Hell
But
yeah.
if the prostitute owns the vagina and gets to set their own rates, then they own their own means of production. And since it's a single person business, then at that point, the worker owns the means of production. So it turns out that prostitutes that don't have to answer to a pimp are incredibly communistic.
There you go.
It makes sense.
It makes sense to us. Wow.
But anyway,
Wonderful.
yeah. I like to cut to the abolition
The
of
meat
property
of
rights.
the prostitution, yes.
No,
you
I
do.
like to cut to the property rights thing because the property rights thing just is
Right,
that's the important distinction there.
Right.
Philosophically too, because I don't necessarily I fundamentally disagree that you can incentivize a society to produce for anyone to get out of bed and become a producer if you don't have property rights. I mean, the whole idea, you've heard the saying, no pain, no gain, right?
Nationalize all vaginas. Thank you, Joe
Yes.
Cole.
If there's no incentive for gain, then no one's putting in any pain. The thing works inversely just as well. No gain, no pain.
And this is why I'm not a socialist or a communist, because basically, let's say that against my will, they Thanos snap socialism into being, and I can have like a moderately nice apartment. I can have unlimited food. I can do whatever I want with my time, and there's going to be no consequences. I instantaneously will not do shit. Like I am not.
Yeah.
And this is the thing where I feel like these people are fucking delusional.
Yeah,
where
delusional.
they literally think that like, oh, people will just like fix power lines and be cops and fight fires and clear sewage lines out of the kindness of their hearts. And it's like, get the fuck out of here. Like, if you're going to do dirty and dangerous work, one, there at least has to be some level of prestige. And then two, there has to be a material reward consummate to the danger and the risk involved, or else people are not going to engage in those behaviors. Yeah. I don't care how self-sacrificial you are. You're not going to climb like a 1,000-foot tall, power or cell phone tower to fix it and risk your life when you know that you can make the same amount of money or have the same material well-being if you just stayed at home fucking making YouTube videos and jerking off and playing video games. It's just not going to happen. So this is where the ANS clubs can come after me for being for propagating socialist propaganda, but I assure you that the socialists and the communists hate me as much as the libertarians do at this point. So
well, they can make, and I completely agree with you, Connor, on it's not good for the right to be categorizing everything as socialist. I mean, Sitch and I have said that a bunch of times, and people always clap back at us for it. But I mean, progressive taxation, sure, you can make an argument that it's socialism. I just don't think it's helpful. Like the idea that progressive taxation and the making it illegal for you to own private property, I think those are like orders of magnitude different.
Yeah, and so we can get back into the content, but what I would say is if you're considering subscribing to my channel, if you're
don't
like
do it.
If you're like I'm actually about to say that. Yeah, if you're a libertarian or like an anti-statist, you will not have a good time. All right?
All of our audience are masochists anyway, so they like.
That's true. That's true.
We cultivate an audience that likes to argue with one another and is not afraid to do so. So that's the best.
So in the
situation.
chat had a good pickup line if you're trying to date a leftist.
Oh,
okay. Hey baby, let me seize the means of your production. There you go.
I sense a Me Too is coming on pretty quickly after that one.
If they say no, I mean, maybe you can make an argument about the public goods for the people. But, at your own risk. At your own risk.
Damn.
Okay, that's all I'm saying.
Scary. See, these are the challenges my generation never faced. God. All right, video.
Left or be a Democrat who's just viciously, constantly attacking the left or Democrats. Once it's abundantly clear that these are just people on the right and they're just spouting the same right-wing propaganda, that's when it's a little less interesting.
See, that's another thing that I don't
Jimmy
like.
Dore is on the right. This is news to me.
I mean, they perceive Tim Pool as viciously attacking the left, but I don't think he's attacking the left in any way, shape, or form that is unfair or undeserved. Which
I completely disagree with you. But...
Really?
Yeah.
Where do you think how do you think he's making unfair attacks on the left?
The problem is that when we talk, we try to be specific with who we're talking about. We're talking about leftists. We're talking about socialists, we're talking about liberals, we're talking about progressives. Tim does fall in the trap of painting the broad brush of saying the left, the left. And he often does a thing where he'll criticize people on the left doing some behavior and act like this is a uniquely left behavior when it's just politics as usual.
Yeah.
Et cetera,
Yes.
et cetera.
Yeah.
I mean,
people talking up their own team.
Right, which is exactly what TYT does. They say the right. And they basically equate all the right as being, as they did in this video just 5 seconds ago, they equate all the right as being racist or fascist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Look at that screen grab. It looks like everybody's waking up after the slumber party. Jane just got out of bed.
Well, they're in the sleepy left bubble. So,
Anna just got out of bed.
Right. Time to wake up. We gotta show some propaganda.
Another TYT video about racism and sexism. Come on,
right.
these videos, these accusations don't make themselves.
Right.
These baseless accusations.
I will say though that for as much as I'll criticize Tim, he does. If you compare him to the TYT, Tim is like 1,000 times more nuanced than TYT ever is, and he will, sometimes, call out the right and disagree with them. So he definitely has a couple legs up over TYT. Definitely.
It's not even close.
Yeah,
it's not even. Tim at least knows what is happening.
Right.
Tim understands the political dynamics of the situation. They don't.
I don't know if that makes things better or worse.
Right,
because
it leans
our Carpenter and the Walrus. Even though I got that story completely wrong, I'm going to stick with it. We have our Carpenter and the Walrus scenario.
Right.
So
the crying because he's eating the clams. Is that the story we're talking about?
Yes, crying.
Doing
the bad behavior and being.
You're saying Tim Pool is the crying because he knows he shouldn't eat the clams.
Yeah, but still doing it. Right.
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 What are you gonna do?
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that that's what's happening, but I'm saying you categorizing it as that's what's happening. It's not necessarily a good thing.
I understand. I do understand. Okay. I'm with you. I don't like the way it absolves TYT because I think incompetence is just as the outcome is the same.
I disagree with you. I'm not sure Tim does know what's happening to the level that you're subscribing. I think he could be in his own little bubble, just like TYT is. Just
really?
A different bubble. Yeah. Sure.
I listen to the libertarian guy he has on the IRL podcast sometimes, and I think, bubble.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Oh, absolutely. I think, look, there was a message that one of Tim's Twitter followers forwarded to me very generously of this one person, in which Tim said, outright, his audience, he considers his audience to be somewhat right-wing. And his audience, the way he described it, and this was probably around December 2020, was libertarians, Trump voters, and intellectual dark web type liberals, which to me is just right-wingers. Right. But it's the kind of right-wing.
I know.
Hey, listen, I will absolutely accept this paradigm, okay? Because you know what it does? It shoves so many people right. It really does. If you're talking about IDW, disaffected liberals, what was the other category? Libertarians and then MAGA or whatever.
Yeah.
I got my beefs with MAGA, which whatever. But at the same time, if they're just gonna throw in every 1990s Democrat liberal and just say, hey, you're right wing now. And it's like, all right, fuck it, you're right wing now. You know, hey, welcome to the club. Like, fuck it.
It's so hilarious that people could think that Sam Harris, who's got like the most rampant case of TDS on the planet, people like, the Weinstein brothers, and, even Jordan Peterson. I mean, I understand they always make the Jordan Peterson comparison, but, all these people, you just label them as right wingers. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What
fuck it.
World?
Brett
the right wing.
Weinstein, right winger.
I know. Like, I taught at Evergreen for how many years? He's like so bleeding heart. Like, it's insane. It's insane.
He wears Birkenstocks to bed.
Yeah, but
come on.
But this is where I'm saying, like, y'all, like I mean, I know you're memeing, but like, this is an opportunity and I'm serious here. Is like, if these many people are right wing, I would absolutely just accept the paradigm, because you can basically say, like, hey, listen, like, you can be reasonable on economics, you can be reasonable on gun rights, you can be reasonable on immigration, and just because you're reasonable on these three subjects, you're now right wing. Welcome to the club.
It's not going to happen. You're saying this is a good opportunity for the Republican Party to basically broaden its base, which on one hand, I mean, with the populism stuff, they've sort of the right-wing populism has dropped some of the neoliberal, neoconservative, laissez-faire, government can't ever do anything idea, but I don't think the other issues that you talked about are going to be moderated, like immigration, gun control, those sorts of things, or even healthcare, really.
Yeah, but like this is where I think, like, again, there's an opportunity for, dinos or rhinos or centrists or moderates. Unfortunately, they don't have spines, so that's part of the problem. Right. So basically, really the options are, the Democrat Party with Joe Biden and kind of like centrist corporate Democrats virtue signaling to leftists, but bitterly disappointing them. And
that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, and that, to me, that's dangerous, because there's going to be a day in which it's no longer a virtue signal,
right? Sure.
Or alternatively, it's like MAGA, America first, and I'm sure there's probably some MAGA folk or America first folk in the crowd or whatever. But I think that has its own nefarious breed of populism and cult of personality. Sure. So if anybody who was moderate but had a spine and was willing to stand up and say, listen, like MAGA, has cult of personality issues. I don't want like a neo-monarchy. And also some of like the isolationism is, not particularly nuanced, I think is a tactful way to put it. I have a better solution. And then also say, like, hey, leftists have lost the fucking plot. Defund the police is dumb as fuck. Like we need police reform, but what they're saying doesn't make any sense. This kind of like self-flagellation of progressives to appease like the woke mob is cringe as fuck. Like there's a lot of political opportunity. Unfortunately, we don't really have anybody with balls or a spine.
What policies
that makes me sad.
Well, what policy? I'm listening to you talk, Connor, but I have no idea without any kind of policy prescriptions. Like if you're talking about, it's great that the Republican Party is going to get more power out of this. How are they going to use that power? What is the purpose of? How is it a good thing to empower?
Do you know how they're? Yeah, do you know how they're actually going to use it? They're going to pass tax cuts for rich people and raise funding for the military, and they're not going to do anything. That's how the Republicans are actually going to
more gerrymandering, more.
Yeah.
So more that's not
good. As usual, right?
It's how they could use the power if they had any balls or spine or brain.
Right.
Well, what would an example of that be? What would be like a policy prescription that you'd be gun ho?
Well, yeah. So unfortunately, like I have a pretty esoteric politics, but I'm obviously going to be pushing them. So I think that we are way too heavy-handed. War on drug, war on terror, like absolutely way too heavy-handed. So we
you think the Republican Party is going to take power and I mean all the police unions and stuff like that
what he's saying is that there is an opportunity, there's a niche that has not been filled,
right?
Where basically any Republican or Democrat politician who was ballsy enough could come out and basically attack the extremes on both sides and appeal to this
probably do
really well. Gotcha.
Yeah, this unspoken moderate who both the left and the right feels very disaffected at the moment.
And policing, by the way, is actually the perfect example of the opportunity. So for instance, like left wing, at least stereotypical far left wing, they want to defund the police. That shit is dead on arrival. Like it's just not pragmatic. Any jurisdiction that's tried it has seen like their homicides like triple.
Right.
And then on the right wing, and then
stupid stuff. We're obviously not in favor of defunding the police.
Yeah, but then on the right wing, it's like, oh, police can do no wrong. And by the way, I'm a former law enforcement officer. Police can never do any wrong ever. So like let's give them our firstborn child and like blow them in public, right?
That maybe obviously there's some people like that, but I don't necessarily know if the right monolithically believes that.
Of course. And so what I'm saying is somebody who saw the opportunity, what you could say is a decent chunk of baby boomers, a decent chunk of millennials and Zoomers, they pretty much all want they all want the war on drugs to be changed.
Yes,
so
definitely.
We can do recreational marijuana at the federal level. We can hyper legalize and tax the shit out of it at the state level. We can decriminalize possession of harder drugs, and we can still go after traffickers. And we can look at other utilitarian models. Like, so for instance, everybody brings up the Portuguese model. We can look at the Portuguese model and see if we can implement it here in a way that makes sense for the United States of America. We'll stop arresting, teenagers and young adults for consuming a relatively benign drug like marijuana. But we'll still go after like really nefarious drug cartels. Anybody with again, testicles, a spine, and a brain could come out and propose this, and I think it would have like pretty broad support from most people. And then also same thing with law enforcement, with like, hey guys, like law enforcement is a tough job. There's one part of defunding that I think is correct, which is the police. Basically, we've slashed our social safety nets, and police do too many things, and they're jack of all trades, master of none. So instead of defunding the police, it should be like modernize the police or refund the police or something like that. And what it should be is, for instance, like field social workers, that actually go out with law enforcement. There should be truancy officers that deal with truancy issues. When a high schooler doesn't want to go to high school, it should not be a uniformed person with a gun showing up to tell them to go to school. So that's the kind of shit where like, even cops, you could sell that to cops where you could say literally, hey, we're going to give you one field social worker per shift, and they are going to be primary on all the psych calls. So you can show up and make sure that people don't get like stabbed to death with screwdrivers, but that is going to be the guy in, the Birkenstocks and the cargo pants and the polo shirt. He's going to be the person, talking to the paranoid schizophrenic who's about to jump off of a bridge.
So you don't have to.
Yeah, so you don't have to, and then you can just do the transport, and that's the kind of thing where like this could be sold to cops, but because we're stuck in this binary between the extreme right and the extreme left, again, like blowing the cop in public versus like cops are evil neo-Nazi fascists that are trying to execute like black children. We can't even have these discussions or these solutions forwarded because discourse is so toxic.
Right. I think that's a great point.
I mean, policing is a big issue on the left, but I'm not sure it's a big issue on the right. And I mean, I'm looking at the most important issues here according to Gallup, and it's like economy, unemployment, federal budget deficit, debt, high cost of living, inflation, gap between rich and poor. Like it's all economic stuff. It's not policing. That's why I'm like, you're saying
left and right. Or like do the left care about policing? Or are you saying those are right-wing concerns?
No, I'm saying you're talking about somebody. I'm like trying to assess this issue that is going to motivate people and like decriminal. I mean, I know a lot of people say, and I'm totally in favor of decriminalizing drugs, but it's not an issue that it's on their mind, and I'm going to vote because decriminalizing. Drugs is on the top of my. It's economic issues. That's what people. So that's why I'm asking you. I'm like, what policy is something that would address like jobs or the economy in general, or the federal budget deficit, or the high cost of living or inflation? The drugs. I don't know. That's not do a lot.
Well, okay, but the part that the right wing does care about is major American cities, downtown areas being burned. They care about that
because it's on CNN. I mean,
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is you can say that this is an economic issue and they only care about the economics. Well, they also care about the economics of their communities that are being vandalized, burglarized, and burned.
Sure.
So you can say this is a solution to improve policing. That way, you know, certain communities that feel victimized by the system feel like they have a better representation and a better say in the system that we have. So hopefully there's like less riots in the future. And on top of that, we're doing these reforms. That way, if anybody does have a riot in the future, we can smash their fucking skull with like a clean conscience, right? So I'm serious. Like, you know, hey, we did the reforms. You're still being an asshole. Guess what? Here's a baton.
I'm not for smashing skulls. Just FYI.
Okay, not smashing skulls, gently placing them under arrest and putting them in the back of a squad car for being jerks.
If you want to use a tranquilizer gun, we can have a conversation. But
you know what we would need to do?
Get a big net launcher.
A net launcher, yeah.
Guns? We would need to modernize and
where's the
police,
freeze
which is part of my
ray?
platform.
I want the freeze ray.
Like, listen, you're talking my language, but like, talk about economics. You know, we do have to address these things, but like, so for instance, one of the things that you mentioned is the wealth disparity between the rich and the poor. Well, one of the ways to address these, I hate it because it's
one of the issues listed by Gallup is lack of money.
Yeah, everybody's worried about that shit. I mean, I'm worried about that shit. So, but basically, you know what is really, really, really good? Having strong social institutions that provide good services for your people so they can make it 0 to 18 and have good opportunities. That's what it is. So the fact that the right wing is like, oh yeah, like I want to go back to the 19th century and have like private schools where my kid can start working at 13 and cut off their fingers in like a pickling plant. That's dumb as fuck. Like I don't know what person who isn't like middle class, upper middle class thinks that's a good idea. So yeah, I'm frustrated with that line of thought.
To give you a specific that you're talking about, I mean, we've already seen this with, you know, the right populists, and this part of this is the shift to populism. Part of this is the shift because now a lot of big corporations have all done woke virtue signaling. Yeah. So since the tribe has shifted, people on the right feel okay attacking them, even though they had been defending them for the last 30 years, basically. And so you'll hear people like Tucker Carlson and other people that will be totally on board with, you know, taxing more, you know, Amazon and talking about how Amazon screws over their workers. So I do think you can craft economic policies that historically would be left, that would appeal to the right in recent years.
Yeah. And here's my thing, you know, that we talk a lot about like equality of opportunity and like bootstrapping on the right. And I think it's completely important to have like very important conservative social ethics. Like, I think it's really important. But the truth is, like, you have to have the opportunity. Like, let's say that there's like a kid born to like a poor crackhead mother, no dad, all that kind of shit. If you send him to a dog shit school, he's going to be a criminal. Like the statistics just say that he is going to be a net detriment to society. Whereas if you gave him, you know, early childhood education, decent education all the way through, you literally gave him mentors and all that kind of stuff in order to try to improve his life, he might, again, like, you can only lead a horse to water. So maybe that kid will still be a shitbag. Who knows? But you are giving him a real shot at equality of opportunity. And that's where, again, I feel like the right says that we have equality of opportunity, but aren't willing to actually provide it.
The right is pushing really school choice. They've been pushing school choice forever. So I think I've been won over to the school choice argument.
But school choice does nothing for the dog shit schools. It does something for the individuals.
Well, it does in giving the schools an incentive. If they don't have enough students, they're obviously going to be closed down. So they've got to fix something on their end.
Well, sure. And actually, you know, everybody was talking about like No Child Left Behind being a shitty policy when Bush was in office. And it actually ended up being a really good policy. They broke up toxic and lackadaisical administrations, and they actually made better schools. So I don't care if it's from additional competition or less competition or better funding. I don't care. We just need good schools.
And this goes back to what one of you guys said earlier. JMac for $50. Thanks so much, JMac. Says, do they not know that by painting Tim Pool and others like him as radical figures for the right, they do harm to their own movement? There's plenty of criticism for Tim, but anyone who thinks they're getting fascism from him will be sorely disappointed. True. Very true. Yeah. And also, and I don't know if this is what Jay meant, but also if you keep painting Tim as like some sort of ultra far right person, you kind of so you're gonna have people who like Tim are gonna say, oh, does this mean I'm like an ultra far right winger now? Am I on the right because I like Tim? Like, you're definitely doing harm to your own movement by in every conceivable way by these ludicrous attacks.
Yeah, when Tim is so blatantly moderate on everything, people think, oh, I listen to Tim and I agree with him, so I must be far right.
Right, exactly.
Even though all your positions basically round out to kind of a middle of the road position.
Right.
I mean, I don't think Tim is taking extreme positions. Tim was against critical race theory. That's why he said he was voting for Trump, was because of the critical race theory ban. So, but I mean, I feel like we both agree with him on that. I agree with him on that.
Sure. Yeah.
Who say themselves, well, I'm not a partisan. I consider all sides of the possible when I'm looking at the news. And so what I do is I watch Tucker Carlson. I maybe click on a Breitbart link or two. I will, if I'm feeling risque, I will troll. I'll check out like what they're saying on Paul on 4chan. But I also consider what the left has to say because I listen to Tim Pool. I think that's the kind of person
who is this person?
This mythical person.
Yeah.
No one. They don't exist.
Who is this person?
They don't exist. No, they don't exist.
is appealing.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've seen this scam now.
People listen. I mean, I'm under the impression people listen to Tim Pool because they're somewhat sick of the partisanship, and Tim Pool kind of tamps the partisanship down. Sitch is going to disagree with me here.
I do, and I don't think that's why people. I don't think that's why people listen to Tim Pool. I think they listen to Tim Pool because they're just looking for a
news
source that cultivates specific types of news stories.
Right.
Yeah. That's what they turn to.
They're anti-woke. You think Tim Pool is basically the anti-woke news, the anti-SJW news?
Yes, basically.
Yes.
And
people who are sick of fucking woke shit. And there's a lot of liberals. I got news for you, TYT. There's a lot of fucking liberals that are sick of this woke shit.
Exactly. Well, I think what he said, Tim said on Twitter, is a perfect encapsulation of his audience. You have MAGA people, right-wingers, libertarians, and an intellectual dark web disaffected liberals.
Right.
I think that's the perfect categorization.
Totally. Sure. But in his mind, all of those categories are far-right Nazis.
Yes.
They're all the same.
But here's what's weird, too, because they're kind of contradicting their own point. Because if he's already categorizing IDW disaffected liberals as right-wingers, then what is he complaining about? Because their complaint is that Tim is pretending to be on the left in order to suck people from the left and the center into being right-wingers.
Right.
But everyone that's already Tim's audience, he already considers a right-winger. So I don't even know who does he think Tim is drawing to his side, I guess.
He just wants Tim to come out and tell everyone, I'm a right-winger. I admit it.
That's basically what it is.
Tim is not a right-winger, though.
No, he's not.
Yeah. His intuitions are definitely left.
Yeah, right.
Consider what the left has to say because I listen to Tim Pool. I think that's the kind of person who he's appealing to.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've seen this scam now countless times. Dave Rubin did it originally.
The Dave Rubin starter kit, really. I mean, look, you can say it goes back to David Horowitz, too, if you want to really delve into history, yeah.
I love how he categorizes every single left-leaning person that gets sick and tired of this woke fucking nonsense. The left has lost their minds, and they're throwing up their hands and saying, I'm done, as a scam.
Right, and I mean, and the thing with Dave Rubin is, I don't think that he's like a grifter in that he, has some different. To me, when someone says a grifter, I think of a person who has a set of principles or beliefs and then lies to the public about those beliefs in order to gain an audience or to gain money or something.
Yes.
I never perceived Dave Rubin as it. I perceive Dave Rubin as just being a simple individual who simply,
boy,
who picks their team, who picks their tribe, and because one tribe was becoming mean to him, he switched teams. I don't think there's a grift there. I just think that's just I think it's simple human psychology at work.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the people who are nice to me, and why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
I know. So it's interesting because he brings up Dave Horowitz, who I didn't know about anything about this guy. So I looked this guy up, and his story is so insane that if they're considering Dave Horowitz as a grifter, these people have lost all touch with reality.
Really?
Okay. Yeah. This guy, he became a pretty big right-wing pundit in the 80s and 90s. But if you look up his history, this is a guy who his parents were both basically socialist, and he was a dyed-in-the-wool, far left socialist growing up, and all throughout the 60s and 70s. And the thing that changed his mind on this, and he wrote an article that kind of changed him away from being a socialist, was that he was friends with big people in the Black Panthers. Okay. So like Stokely Carmichael, what's the guy's name? Huey, whatever
Long?
The guy's name is. Yeah, Huey Long. He knew all these people in the Black Panther Party, and he was working with them, and he supported the Black Panther Party at the time. And this was in like the 70s or 80s. One of the Black Panther Party people asked him if he could recommend someone to do their bookkeeping for them. And he recommended some random lady who wasn't like politically associated. Like she just, she's an accountant. And what ends up happening is that lady finds out by doing their bookkeeping that they were basically tax dodging and doing all sorts of other illegal behavior. And when she confronted the leader of the Black Party at the time, they basically killed her.
What? Holy shit!
She was found like raped and murdered.
What?
Okay.
What?
Yeah, no, this is a totally insane story.
What?
And so, yeah, no, I know.
Like they
exactly.
didn't just want to get rid of her; they raped her before.
Yes.
What the fuck? Evil incarnate.
Yes, no, it's horrible. It's horrible. And so this is what changed him. The fact that he recommended someone for a job who was then raped and murdered by the people he thought he was working with. Okay. And this woman's murder, even though all signs pointed it to being someone affiliated with the Black Panther Party, it was unsolved, and the police didn't really go into it, et cetera, for all these political reasons. And so that horrible event is kind of what opened up the door to him to shift his perspective.
Right.
And now look,
yeah,
you can say, and he went very far in the other direction, on the right.
Dave Rubin is like, people were mean to me on Twitter, but hell, like my secretary wasn't raped and murdered.
Right. And so for them to look at this individual who was a hardcore socialist and then goes through this traumatic experience and feels this overwhelming guilt and then completely goes in the direction, to not look at that and say, oh, that's very obvious human psychology, what happened there. But to say, no, this guy was a grifter. These people are insane. These people are totally insane.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. Like, it's so obvious. But they probably don't know this stuff. They're probably just attacking the guy based on
I don't know how they
Wikipedia page or something.
I would assume if you knew who David Horowitz was, or Dave Horowitz, you would know this, because his switch was very public. He wrote an article about it. This is the reason he gave for it happening.
Oh, okay.
Like it was a big story when it happened. I would imagine if you knew who he was and you knew that he switched teams, you would know why he switched teams. So
well, maybe not. I mean, this is all news to me. You're the one telling me about it.
Yeah, but I didn't. Did you know who he was before?
No. First I've heard of him.
Yeah, can I actually unfortunately I have to go to dinner and do conservative adult normal things like taking care of my 3-year-old and stuff.
Thanks for stopping in, man.
Well, but I wanted to kind of address this really quick before I went, if you don't mind indulging one more rant. Basically the way that I think they identify Tim Pool as right wing is electoral outcomes. So for instance, if he's constantly saying progressives are insane, the left wing's lost their mind, CRT is bullshit, I was a liberal or a progressive and they've gone so crazy that I can't even deal with them anymore. And as a result, I think that, I'm at least voting Republican. I'm more of a libertarian. I think MAGA is the solution, this, that, the other. Then his electoral outcome, regardless of his philosophical abstract politics, are to get people to either dislike the left wing or to like the right wing more. So that's why they probably identify him as right wing. Same thing with Dave Rubin, where like on a principle, if you were to analyze his politics from like a philosophical level, he's a liberal, right? He's a liberal. He's probably progressive. I very much doubt he has any problems with LGBTQ folk. He probably believes in, or I know he had like his little ANCAP rant on Joe Rogan's things. Yeah. But ultimately, I'm sure, you know, if he talks to like if he talks to somebody about progressive taxes for 20 minutes, he'll probably change his mind again. So the point being that he's probably a liberal, and again, like you said, human psychology. You know, he was going with people who weren't treating him like shit. Amazing, right? So kind of getting to this fella, you know, who was a part of the Black Panthers, and then somebody got murdered. I think that a leftist who still wanted to be a douche about this person's change of heart in, you know, conceptualizing other politics is that like, just because bad shit happens doesn't mean you abandon your principles. So what they would say is that like, oh, well, you know, you worked with the Black Panthers. The chapter that you worked with was, you know, a criminal organization that committed this rape and murder. But ultimately, like the fight for civil rights and all that kind of stuff is a left-wing thing. As a result, you shouldn't flip so hard that you then turn around and attack the thing that you were once for because something bad happened. You just say, oh, these people were, you know, like you said, evil incarnate pieces of shit who were using ostensible high-minded ideals in order to cover up nefarious bullshit. And so I think that would be like the stronger criticisms. Whether or not these people actually think that is a different question, because they might not have even just like thought this far ahead.
No, I think you're entirely right in that they view this very consequentially based around elections. That's all that matters, who wins the elections. And if you're not helping my team win the elections, then you must be on the other team.
Yeah,
I think it's exactly how they view this.
You bet.
Yeah, and you can see this reflected in the way that they even attack progressives and Democrats, because it's not enough to be a Democrat. You also have to be a progressive, and it's not enough to be a progressive. You also have to be a socialist. And that's where like even AOC, AOC and Bernie Sanders, you know, they're probably as left wing as you can be in American electoral politics, and they're still constantly cannibalized by their own base because they're not left-wing enough.
Right.
And that, you know, that's where it becomes like religious levels of purity, and unfortunately, like a very toxic and hyper cannibalistic part of politics.
Yep. True. Very true.
All right, man. Take care.
Yeah. Thanks for coming
on.
Yeah, my pleasure. So sorry for ranting. Anybody want to check me out? My name's Connor. I run a YouTube channel named Counterpoints. Type in Counterpoints common spelling into YouTube. Unfortunately, you know, I got to go be a family man and live the conservative tradcon lifestyle. So I'm sorry I can't hang out more. But it was an absolute blast. And if we can do anything similar in the future, I would love to.
All right.
Sure.
Take
We
care,
need
man.
more enlightened centrists around. So
yes, we do.
All right. Beautiful, guys. Catch you
later.